Edit some of this stuff as I go along. I edited down to as much as I was going to, and I figured I'd do the rest as I went along. I always think I'm going to prepare for poetry reads, but then I always wind up doing it at the last minute. So these are mostly works from these two new books that I'm doing with Viking and Penguin. A new book of poems, the Book of Noise, which is mostly prose poems, but then just regular verse poems as well. And then another book of diaries. So I'll just start off with a poem. In the gears of the jungle, in the desecration of the iris in bloom for images juxtaposed in the quasar mist, the mitre of white dwarves, the bishop's claw in the conclave of authority among straining stars, I abjure all velocity as I shatter each commitment, the words in vanished gold inlaid in walls like Mexican teeth. In the birdcage beneath my ribs, in the panic of the hummingbird as it swallows my heart through the sly thorn of its beak, in the compromise of the clock, in the hour hands folding across the seconds like trapped eels, in the harmless crystal made mad on your lips, sown by decay and night, in the emblem of pedants with exploding luggage and gauges for elegance, in the subscription of hearts, in the strangled teeth of work, in the judgment of each word. In the end, just pretend you hear me. Okay, this is from the new diaries. Kind of skipped from the basketball diaries about 3 or 4 years and start up. The French call them papillons d'amour, that is, the butterflies of love. I call them crabs, the tiny parasites of crotch. Jenny Lee noticed them first. Last night, she snagged one as it broke loose from the camouflage of her jet-black pubic underbrush and slowly tried to patrol the crevice of the scar from a past cesarean birth, like a scout soldier traversing a trench. She seized it hostage, placing it in the specimen jar, and proceeded through deep infiltration to raid the hirsute main camp, at first taking more prisoners, then proceeding to a harsher, yet more expedient tactic of strict search and destroy. She arrived at my room in Chelsea this morning with jar in hand. After a short briefing, she removed from a bag a pocket flashlight and magnifying glass. I was ordered to remove my pants. The search began immediately, with a great enthusiasm and vigor on her part. My blondish pubes made the jar from a visual standpoint a snap, so to speak. I was skeptical, however, that I could be a carrier of said invaders. You're wasting your time, I'm clean, I offered patiently. Oh yes, well, what's that there then, she replied. That's a tiny blackhead is all I get closer to the glass. It's a fucking moving blackhead, man. Check it out. She was right. I was shocked. I felt hygiene deficient. I wondered who gave what to who, but no sense looking for blame in these things. We were in this together. It felt sort of sweet sharing such an affliction. I held still as Jenny Lee removed the visible parties. It hurt a bit. They had burrowed deep into the pores. Apparently, we had been the host of a tenacious strain. Finally, she resorted to tweezers, depositing the casters in a separate jar which had a picture of a beaming baby's face on it and was labeled stewed carrots. I asked her why she was saving the little buggers, which on close examination did indeed bear an uncanny resemblance to the common crab. As far as the French are concerned, I could say in all honesty that even the Bacchus had never seen a butterfly that looked remotely like these creatures. You'll see, she answered. Just let me rub in some of this lotion I borrowed from Robert. It was a wonderful manner by which she to be medicated. My cot quickly stood erect, which was fortunate, as we discovered two stragglers hiding beneath the basement. With the application done, Jenny Lee removed one of the resonance of her jaw. Now you pick one. She looked over. Make sure it's a live type. We're going to have a race. I picked out a trooper who had been circling restlessly around the bottom of the jar. We took a long sheet of drawing paper from Jenny Lee's portfolio and drew a line down the center. First race was a 12-inch sprint. I laid down the paper so that our pubic hair waited at the finish line as an incentive. My crab ran like a fix, falling off the edge halfway through the race. Jenny Lee's was in tip-top form. It came in clocked at 3 hours and 23 seconds. We spent the next hour establishing the best of our stables and enjoyed the rest of the day at the races. What a woman who can turn an ailment into a viable recreation. I keep throwing myself off by changing the names, you know, like that had the person's real name, I kept saying Jenny Lee. And I almost slipped a few times, but it really doesn't matter in this, because I think the guy's name is in it. But, you know, it's fucking Allen Ginsberg, you think it's mine if I quote that. I was dancing with Ren at Max's tonight, Sympathy for the Devil, waiting for Bridget to show up with the ice in tow and the velvets to come on at midnight, when I got a cryptic message from Anne, passed on by that blonde waitress who's always humming Amazing Grace, getting hit on by the parvenus of the quasi-Italian aristocrat set. You know, that could have very well been Debbie Harry. Message read, hope you have not forgotten that the big G is in town for the night, and that you said you put him up, and that he will be at your apartment by 11. I checked Ren's watch, and mild dismay, it was already 10 past the designated hour. Of course, the big G was none other than Mr. Allen Ginsberg, and I recalled in one congealed mass of anxiety that I had indeed promised to put the great poet up, since Billy B., who allows me to share his place, was away in Mexico, and Allen's apartment was being bed-bugged by the fumigators this week. And he was only in town for the night, en route from one university reading to the next, and thus I had to move ass back to 10th Street to allow his entrance and take the opportunity to engage him in deep poetic conversation. I told Brent hastily that I had to eschew any further pas de deux. And split, moving down Park Avenue South with a post-dance floor exhilaration. I haven't danced since that night, actually. I even forgot a about Bridget or Rodney with the goods. Who cares about drugs when the deep poet is waiting at your doorstep? I turn the corner I turned the corner of 10th Street and 3rd to a comical scene on an otherwise vacant street, darting glances left and right with the alacrity of petty crime paranoia. It's the hirsute master himself, the leader of the pack, tossing pebbles from the street construction site down the block in handfuls against the window of the ground floor. It's the window around back, you fucking juvenile delinquent, I whispered, having snuck up on his back with felony feet. By the way, Ed, anyone ever tell you you throw like a girl? He looked serious at first, then sheepish. It just said it was the ground floor, said Alan. Did you say it was the ground floor? Said Alan. Ever thought you might be on the nard or something? And then the nard with the lights out, I shot back. We took the steps and I opened the front door and led him down the hall into the apartment. It's a nice place. It's a real steal of boot. Bill got it a year ago, furnished it with uptown money and invited me to stay with him for about 4 months ago. It has a loft, a sleeping, hoovering over the small living room, a long hallway, and a cozy bedroom in the back, which also has a loft used for stacking excess boxes of books. So the living room's lined with filled shelves already, floor to ceiling. You want to check out an illusion, and this is the place. I brew a little tea in the mini kitchen off the living room. We get serious munchies and decide on ratness to soup and blintzes out into the energetic old streets. Ratness is great. Ginsburg getting the usual hippie cheers and blue-collar jeers. Half of America wants to look like him, the other half wants to see him dead. As for me, I see him eat, and Lord, he can surely put it away. There's a little unscheduled floor show in the back booth. It seems Rodney Dangerfield, one of my favorite comedians, and a late-night regular here. He'd always come down after his club closed at Ratton's. Is telling Yippee leader Jerry Rubin that he is an asshole with enormous proportions. I separate this opinion of Mr. Dangerfield to Alan Soto Volke. Alan, pressured to stick pure ass to his fellow counterculture honcho, assures me what a lily Rubin the fact is. Come on, Alan, I am your turnip pine. I mean, I dig Abby in lots of ways, but Rubin is strictly from rhododendron. The best you could say that is this fucking placebo ass, and at the worst he's dangerous, hypocrisy, and fancy boobs. No shit, check out those feet. That rock star snakeskin job, those are 400 at least. Give me a fucking break. Alan begins to raise his finger pedagogue style, but I'm saved the lecture by the arrival of dessert, which Alan obviously considers more serious business than the defense of Jerry Rubin. On the way back home, we run into none other than the abbot of Warholden, Paul M., with his usual Bronx hand animation. He lays on Alan the outline of his newly planned project, a Civil War epic produced naturally by Andy and directed by himself. He wants Alan to play the part of Walt Whitman, issuing aid and comfort in every sense of the word to the Union wounded. And any rebels, for that matter, if they're cute enough. A lot of cute-looking boys inquires Alan. And boys just get Bronx that hard. Yeah, that's where we work. That's our signature there, Alan. Paul replies. Sounds like fun. Alan's bubbling. Any script written yet? Not yet, but we'll send it around you soon, an outline at least. By the way, Jim, maybe there's some work for you, like writing dialogue when we get into that stage. Fine, I shoot back. Just remember, any phones are going here and now will be picked up, stored away, and brought back to you later. So I hope you mean it. Don't worry, Paul assures me. Hey, and maybe we could even use you as a soldier. What about that, Alan? Do you think that hair, Jim's, will look nice in color on the screen? Look nice, that hair? With that, the conversation ended, and the abbot resumed his manic pace, heading home to another serious night of asexuality. I'm hoping his last remarks didn't inflame Alan's passion, turning the key into the apartment. I'm wondering what to do if he does try to put the move on me. After heating some more tea and playing Alan the Who's new LP, I show him a new poem of mine in the recent issue of Poetry magazine. He keeps mumbling things like, "You got some great lines here, some really great haikus within the overall work. But what are you going to write when they throw you in the concentration camps?" Terrific. Real solid literary criticism. Could have gotten better fucking poetic advice from Leon Trotsky, for God's sake. I tell Alan to speak for himself. I'm not planning on grabbing a bus to the camps myself. Fucking politics, I mean, does he really believe it when he spouts that shit? Worse yet, could he possibly be right? Have I not been paying attention somewhere? Well, he does go on to make some useful comments about the work, and they were quite generous too. I like Alan a lot. I like to break down the solemn facade and reach the goof heart. It's late now when he gets off the sofa and asks where he should crash. There doesn't seem to be any flirt inflection in his question, so I was relieved when he put it in the singular I form. I tell him that as an honored guest, he gets to sleep in the master bedroom and lead him back there. As I'm setting the alarm clock for Alan's early wake-up to get out to the airport, I hear his voice behind me asking, "Hey, what's this thing?" I turn around and gasp. In his hands, the poet is holding Billy B's heavy-duty plugged directly into a wall socket because batteries are not enough to power this motherfucker vibrator. I realize that Deborah Duxter, the debutante, must have left it lying there on the sheets when she left yesterday morning. It is a mean machine, 3 varying powers and a hard rubber half ball on the end. It probably gives a hell of a body massage, but Deb and I wouldn't know about that. More limited area uses we had devised for it, however, are spectacular. There is no way around it. I explained to Alan its functions. As I detail the matter, a great expression of sheer awe grows across Alan's face. Think I may try it? Yes, his eyes bulging at the intricacy of his engineering. Be my guest, I tell him as I walk back to the living room. You better stick with the low speed at first. So as I lay down to read, I hear the familiar hum of the machine in its #1 setting. Within minutes, numero dos. Then a full roar of high speed. I hear a yell from the bedroom, a big loud yell. Holy shit, I jump up. His heart couldn't take it. I dash back, it's not a pretty sight. Apparently, his scream was one of ecstatic variety. There was jism everywhere. He hit the bottom of the sleeping loft, the button, for God's sake. It was hanging from a beam like a mini staggering line. Pretty good, boss. I looked down. That's what I call thrust. But the poet had a look of horror on his face. He was wrestling with the vibrator like it was a fucking bobcat. He was still slapping around his half-hard dick, which was red as a midget being choked. I can't turn it off, he burst out urgently. Pull the plug, quick, my dick feels like a sparring partner. I bent to the socket and yanked out the plug, then I pulled it by the wire off Alan's bent body, as if I were reeling in some lethal eel. There was some jism on the rubber tip, but before I could grab a tissue to scoop it up, it plumped onto the pillow next to the poet's head. Oh shit, that was incredible, he spoke in a sort of glottal stop. Each word popping from his lungs in a separate burst of air. I didn't want to tell him for fear he might want to try again, that this was not the proper way to do it, that the right way, at least to my mind, was to wear a pair of tight underwear and run the ball tip along your arm as if you were ironing your shirt. That way your cock doesn't whack around all over the place. And you're not left with cum hanging from every shelf and branch in the room. I usually slip the machine out of sight, then offering another good night, retired to the sofa in my room. Alan was asleep quickly, and I didn't hear either the alarm or him leaving in the morning. I found a sweet note on waking, however, apart from other things. It said, "I hope I wasn't too much trouble." Okay, this is, this is the day I was born. Same for Herman Melville, the Emperor Claudius, and Mrs. Jerry Garcia. And as an omen for the generation I inherited, this is the day the Red Bear scattered their first H-bomb into the atmosphere. In fact, they detonated it 5 hours after I was pulled from my mother's womb. And the radiation, fear, and desperate heat has been hanging above like some tyrant constellation ever since. So Ann and Ted and other friends from the poetry scene are throwing a little celebration for the day tonight. I took the 20 that arrived in the mail from my aunt and tipped over to Desmond and Cookie's place on 10th Street to get safe. Knowing it was my birthday, Desmond gave me 4 5s of the pure before she had a chance to put a whack on it. She also, at her own expense, offered to throw a few party lines of coke into the cooker as I was getting off, but I passed on that. I never liked speedballs, combining Caroll and cocaine together in a shot. I always felt like it was spreading applesauce over a good pork chop. I've always been a purist with heroin. I don't like to dilute the essential rush. I don't want to swerve in either direction from that middle lane. Besides, I've never seen what the rage about coke is all about. The only thing it does for me is get my kneecaps high. It's just methadone with a better alibi. This is when I had this little job writing little bits of stuff to display up the walls. A new job. I've been spending a lot of time up in Andy Wall's studio, better known to the faithful as the factory, doing art assignments for short money. Andy is a tough man, sick with a buck. Today I had to come up with a list of 30 names for characters in a new play he's orchestrating to show in Europe, tentative title Port. I sit in a corner overlooking Union Square Park and watch the passing of continental types visiting, check out their routine. Andy really can bring out the asshole in a person. I lay a name on each visitor up there. There was a sporty Italian type, hands constantly fingering a Gucci ascot, and the name Cosmo Puccio jumps onto the page. The seedy type from the land of the rising sun pops in, looking like he's got a cache of automatic weapons waiting downstairs in the side bags of his Kawasaki. What else to call him but soon we take a shower. It's terrible. Turns out he was an interior decorator trying to unload a van full of bonsai trees to Andy to give the place that Sylvania touch. After 30 of these aficionados and parvenus passed in and out, I got my list. Everyone thinks this place is constant orgies and Marlon Brando coming in just to say hello, but the truth is, it's boring as an empty bag, and the only celebrity I've seen in the past 2 weeks has been fucking Donovan, for Christ's sake. Of course, everyone that graces these portals is a star, but that 15 minutes were up long ago. The old factory up in the West 40s was actually supposed to be a wild scene, but since Andy took that bullet in the rib last year from Valerie Solanas, this place is about 17 doors in the elevator. A receptionist who is no doubt an abused child and takes every opportunity to even it up. And security cameras running up the ass. It's also kept immaculate, the floors of these parquet jobs that outshine the Boston Celtics home court. The desks of glass on chrome high-tech, papers stacked in neat piles on tops filled with electric Rolodexes, Princess phones, staplers that looked like they were commissioned out to Bauhaus, sleek IBM Selectrics, what looks like Waterford crystal jars for fucking paper clips. They look great, but I couldn't imagine typing on glass. On the other side of a teak partition wall is a huge screening room with tastefully curved sofas and deep pile carpeting, white as a virgin polar bear. There's not much art hanging. Some of Andy's works in the back recesses of the screening room, his quote, working space, though nobody's made an effort lately to fulfill that title. There's a stuffed German Shepherd with a heart-on mounted in place near the elevator. I'm not sure if it's art or a security decoy. The only good line in this one, actually it's a good one, but it's just too much about speed. Bridget tried to cure me once, some of heroin speed, and I wound up about 80 times worse. But this one, Bridget is out at the coffee shop proving it really is possible to shoot speed and eat 14 cheeseburgers within the same 20 minutes. I could turn literary any minute. Okay, yeah. I walked into the back room of Max's tonight. I was a little more loaded than I thought I was when I left the house. I was holding my hand up into the laser beam. There was this laser beam that came down the street, and a mirror in front of Max's went right into the back room. There's the whole thing about me trying to find the source of where the laser beam came from. But I guess I was holding my hand up to the laser beam, letting the light pass through, and considering the possibility that I had perhaps missed the vein on the last shot, and thus it was just coming on slowly and with a vengeance. Lost in this rumination, hands still poised in the beam, passing right through my palm and onto the white wall, where it simply hung like a stigmata. Andrea comes up to me and leans into my ear. Wouldn't it be nice if we could pass through the light instead of the opposite? Even as you are now experiencing? That's quite a non sequitur, I thought to myself. Not thinking Andrea had it in her. She is the newest of Andy's stable of whacked out superstars. The Jap princess from Queens who has adapted the name of her mentor, i.e. Andrea Warhol. I looked down at her. She was only about 4'11". Then we would, she's quoted again, then we would have to move at the speed of light. And the first rule of the law of relativity is that though one can move at 99.9% of that speed, it is impossible to equal the speed itself, since that is a point of relativity itself. I was quite pleased with myself for spitting this. Oh, I was talking. That's great. I was quite pleased with myself for spitting this out with such alacrity, as ripped out of my brain as I was, and slyly peered around, hoping someone at a nearby table had picked up on the drift and was as impressed as much as I with myself. Nothing happening there. They were all too busy impressing someone else themselves. The real world is hard on the ego, and the back room of Max's is out of the question altogether. I know a faster speed, Andrea spoke up. I've forgotten about her.
So she was amazingly sexy with a body that would fit balanced to your hand like a boxed edition of Proust. What would that be, I asked. I was switching gears. Forget about being a conceited asshole. I was now trying to get over it. The speed of death, she replied. I had a stupid smile on my face, which I lost clumsily on hearing her answer. Huh? You know, you hear about these people that have accidents and their hearts stop beating for a time and they're pronounced clinically dead, and some hotshit doctor runs in and revives them. It's like these people always describe the same sensation of entering a long tunnel and passing into the purest light and becoming almost one with that light, and then just when they're brought back, but they really did pass through that light, you know, and they would have become one totally if the doctor didn't fuck things up and bring them back to this. But how would you like to continue this later? Come home with me. I mean, I was realizing as I said this that I was seriously stoned, as seriously as one could get without being unconscious under the toilet sink somewhere strange. Not tonight, she went on, as if she didn't even hear what I had said, but knew I was going to say it because everybody did sooner or later every night of her life. Why don't you come see me tomorrow night? I live right here on Park South, right up the street, about 5 to 8 p.m. Naturally, you'll see something special. I will certainly be there. I needed to sit or fall. You're a Catholic? Don't kid around about such things. You're not as smart as you think. None of these fuckers are. She raised her voice, pointed around the room. That's another rule of relativity. I was impressed by that, almost as impressed as by the way she looked walking away. Yeah, obviously, you know. But that's okay. Okay. In the 2 weeks I've been here, this apartment that Bridget got me for the summer has turned into one vast closet. This is the next day. If I let go of my tendency towards excessive neatness for a single day, it snowballs into complete disregard on its way to total disarray. So I'm frantically overturning piles of clothing, trying to find something worthy of a subtle pose as I enter Andrea's place tonight for our coming hours of good times, lust, defiance, high hijinks, sex approaching a new decade, sweetness and possibilities unparalleled among the ages. And I'm late and shit. The only thing reasonably unfilthy is this semi-fucking cowboy shirt. I'll have to go with it. I might be in luck. She may have a fetish somewhere. When your wardrobe consists of nothing but a phony cowboy shirt and denims, you have to hope for fixations. I inject and speed out the door. It's another one of those steel blue nights on Park Avenue South, and the laser I've grown obsessed with is sharp as a beacon. It's menacing looking, as if someone drilled a hole in the side of a canister of plutonium and spit it out. This seriously harmful light. I want to stick my hand in its path like I do in the back room of Max's, where its intricate journey ends. But it's 5 flights up, and I am irritated by not being able to prove it's still harmless. I notice it passes right by the address which Andrea gave me, and now, looking down on pavement level for the first time since I turned to the street, I notice something else. It's not reassuring. I stare my pocket for the vial of Valium, frayed edges, nauseum, insidious. The red, twirling lights of 5 police cars and an ambulance are clashing into each other and bouncing off the hoods of passing cars, carrying the whole mess right up the block to me. I break into a dead run. I know without looking at the building there in front of us, the address she gave me, and I think I know something more than I want. I get there, oh God, it's her. She's dead. She jumped, and she's lying there naked and dead and covered with a blanket that has been leaning a few minutes before against a spare tire in some cop car. She's holding a can of Diet Cola in one hand and a pair of rosary beads in the other. Her head is smashed on one side. Her hair, her fine blonde hair, is like a tangled net with small shining red fish trapped and lifeless. I lay back my body on the hood of a car and hug the hood ornament until I'm almost twisting it off and a cop moves me away. I noticed this guy, Emilio, a factory sycophant and quasi-aristocrat utility man, heading towards me. I'm about to tell him to piss off, but he gets out enough words to bite. He asked me if I had a date with her, and I tell her I did. Then he goes on that he too was supposed to meet her at 8, and he points out 7 or 9 other Max's habitees who were hoovering around, and explains that she had made dates with all of them for the same time. I guess she wanted an audience, you know. No, I wouldn't know. Why don't you not continue with what you're saying and just tell me if anyone saw her jump? But I saw her. He was French or something. He replied, breaking his English with finesse. I always arrive early. It was strange, you know? No, I don't know. What do you mean? It was like she was grabbing onto the laser beam, as if she was trying to grab it, but with her mouth, not with her hands, like she wanted to swallow it. Or be swallowed by it, I mumbled, remembering the talk last night. What? Never mind. You mean she passed right through the beam as she fell? Yes, and well, it was really very strange, you know. I know would you like some espresso? I had a little lemon twist. I know I was shocked and all seeing this, but she yelled out something very strange before she jumped. I don't know what, but I was in a state, very strange. You see, it seemed from down here like some illusion of optics. Yes, you say that, but it seemed that for a moment, like a whole second of time, that she was actually hung onto the beam from the laser as if it were a line for clothes and the can of soda and the rosary. She was a Jew, no? I walked away without any acknowledgement to Emilio, though I wasn't deaf to him for what he had to say. She was a Jew, and last night she asked me, the last thing almost, if I was a Catholic. I took it strictly non sequitur, like everything else she said. And what did she ask? Why did she ask me to come 5 minutes before the others? I imagine that she thought I was such an asshole with my absolute and overwhelming love of my own bullshit rap that she wanted to show me before the others got there something about a genuine absolute, the absolute she was speaking about in action. I could talk all night about relativity and the speed of light, but she was going to prove her point in complete and enduring terms about her notion, that crazed, beautiful phrase, the speed of death. And she did. And why did she decide to jump before I and the rest of the boys, aside from the punctually at ease Emilio, had arrived? Was it charity for me, sparing me the sight? More likely, it was just disregard. Why should she think of me at all in the face of her trip into the passing of light? Why did she ask me at all, or laugh? I'm laughing so hard, it's becoming difficult to breathe. I go home now and stare in the big mirror, and I see too much of myself there. Passing into my rehabilitation phase. It's called the New Ordeal. Since McGuell got his head bashed in by the dealer we tried to rip off last night, I've had to reconsider my immediate plans for the future, or non-future. This guy got an axe by this dealer we were going to take off the minute he walked in the doorway. It went right to the middle of his head. It was gruesome. But you can't shake the, as you might well guess. I can't shake the cringy notion that it could have been me, not McGuell, who walked into that hallway first. So this morning I popped over to the drug emporium of Avenue C, scored 6 bags, enough to last until tomorrow, and made a few phone calls. I called Stanley K., my old high school pal, and took him up in his offer to get to his doctor, Papa, who put in a word for me at his resident hospital and vouchsafed the immediate passage onto the methadone program there. Stanley turned out with his usual efficiency, calling me back within the hour and telling me to get my ass right up there. A certain Mrs. Toto would be waiting to enroll me in, as Stanley calls it, the Academy of the Future. The hospital is on the fringe of Spanish Harlem. I'm not giving out the name, but Moses saw a burning bush there once. I think it was in the emergency clinic while he was waiting for attention. I shouldn't joke, this is a break. I can't hack the bullshit in the streets anymore. The dope sucks lately and the dealers are worse. I can't live my life any longer on the dealer's time. Waiting in the sleet, passing through the street lights on Rivington Street, strangling my own shadow in drifted snow, or swinging on the monkey bars in the Pitt Street Park, frozen in winter, my tongue stuck to the metal in anticipation. Waiting, always waiting for the man to arrive. He knows you'll wait. There is no alternative. So that's what I need. That's all this will be, an alternative, something along the lines of stability and regularity. It's my only choice for my work. I need a consistency in my mood, if there is to be any consistency in my style. I can't consider continuing to write always in the hollow flux of desperation and incipient terror. I try to cower in some facade of humor. That humor will act as a catalyst to purify the tragic, but it can't go on. My body is broke. I'm shitting where I eat. So I arrived in this cavernous building and wandered through the maze of corridors in search of the methadone clinic and the awaiting Mrs. Toto, whom I picture as being either from the Orient or Oz. I finally find the place, as I imagine, in some basement far from the big money Fifth Avenue endowed pavilions, right around a bend from two swinging doors marking the morgue, in fact. I entered through an imposing-looking door. The hours during which the medication is dispensed are marked in a sign which is painted a sickly yellow, not unlike the color of hepatitis. And a woman, quite attractive and not oriental, greets me. She leads me into a small cubicle of an office, and I sit down to answer questions for the seemingly endless pile of forms and releases. This is a glass door, so I can see out into the clinic itself, where a Puerto Rican guy and his old lady are having a mild disagreement in the corner next to a tank of tropical fish donated by the patients. There is a nurse behind the bar, not unlike the small partition of an Orange Julius stand, handing a cup full of measured liquid to this black dude with a shaved head. Mrs. Toto finishes with the more formal data and moves on to some quasi-psychological tests, old standards like the ink blot, etc. I keep getting distracted by the couple in the corner arguing that gauges are moving toward red. Now I have to draw a picture of a tree. God knows what it has to do with anything. All I want is some of that orange shit in the paper cup that black guy was drinking. I draw the tree and reveal more about my lack of draftsmanship than the condition of my mind. I draw it totally barren of leaves, with dead-like branches twisted and gnawed like the fingers of a cartoon witch. I imagine they'll conclude from this that I'm a sick, empty spirit. But it's just that for the first days of art class in the school of the Good Shepherd, I've never been able to draw a leafy tree. The barren trees of fall were always my specialty. The only thing the picture speaks of is the condition of my education, but the shrinks, prigs as they are, will not consider this point. We'll have a proper field day profiling me from the sketch of a fucking tree. Young would be outraged with the downgrade in his chosen field. I had the drawing in a box of crayons I handed back to Mrs. Toto, who was half standing and craning her neck to see out the window into the clinic now. I can hear as I turn these muffled screams. My God, it's the Puerto Rican couple. The guy is holding the girl by the nape of the neck and pushing her head down into the water of the fish tank. I see her face through the glass, her eyes like they're about to explode in the water, and he is not yielding a bit. He's like... The security guard rushes in and pins the guy. She doesn't realize for a moment that he has let her go and just stays there in frozen terror. Her chin is pressed into the colored shades of gravel on the bottom. Guppies and black mollies are in panic and grouped in the corner, gyrating in what resembles some sort of mating ritual. There's a green fern sticking in the poor girl's ear like a rancid Q-tip. The nurse pulls her head out and a bobtail swordfish slides from her hair and onto the floor. I scoop it up and flip it back into the tank. The señorita is gasping for air and at the same time going for her boyfriend's quiones with the tip of her boot. The guy, being held by the guard, catches one in the left testicle. It's mayhem all over. Nurses diving and detain this half-drowned ball of fire. I get escorted to the door, pulled away from the fish tank where I'm trying to ascertain the damage to a Siamese fighting fish who seems severely disoriented. You should have him draw a tree, I tell Miss Toto. Mrs. Toto at the door gives me a polite shove and tells me I can start tomorrow morning on the juice. I can't believe my good fortune. This place is a veritable bedrock of rehabilitation. California then, you know. So there's one about California. Spending Christmas last week in California seemed a bit absurd. It's my first Christmas in California. The climate and surroundings lending nothing to my youthful remembrances. In a sense, that was a good thing. Christmas has given me nothing but a flash for invented suicide since I had laid the salad years of that holiday by the age of 9. Out here in the Mecca of Boratine, the days just slid by with a surreal thievery. The smell of eucalyptus permeating these roads does not do much for me in the way of wintry nostalgia, except recollections of cough drops and seasonal colds. And that frightful balm my mother would heat and rub on my chest while I was laid up in bed on the big day while I heard my brother out in the living room running down the batteries on my toys, not wrecking them outright. Even the nativity scene at the local church seemed suspect. When I passed by that week, I saw the straw in the manger under serious attack by this incredible, monstrous turkey buzzard, which had knocked flat 2 adoring shepherds and Joseph's donkey, and whose truly enormous wingspan was threatening to decapitate a wise man as they scattered at my approach. It did have one effect I had not bargained on, and which I cannot explain, but without the trappings of snow, bogus Santas, and fir trees, and vacant lots being hawked for outrageous markups, I found myself thinking of it more as a holy day than a holiday, taking in Mass even, not feeling a hypocrite for it. The rest of the day, as I recall, I spent the better part of 3 hours climbing 2 adjoining trees in the fault line ravine to rescue a cat. Yeah. Those are the little, you know, the joys of the place down there. Okay, so I'll segue into the knowledge with a few short poems, which are actually more like nods anyway. This is called Needles Junction. Waking from a dream at 50 miles per hour, or playing soccer for the attention of the czar. On a field the size of the Mojave Desert with Sam Shepard, our goalie, he says, "I'm the only one in this desert who can legally use his hands." And I run for miles and miles with nobody else in sight. I rest when I hear clarinets from the sagebrush like a jukebox in the 40s. I'm the one they pick to shoot the penalty kick. Then I notice the ball is the left eye of one truly enormous rattler. I Sue Verdo, the wife killer. Is that the scene that Charlie Chaplin movie? My verdict has been passed. Now the order of my judgment draws near. With no more questions to answer, the time heats up. Even the past moves swiftly. Only small detail draws me into the timelessness of closed walls. Scratching the faces of my murdered wives into the gravel, From the fragments of passing clouds, I formed whole bodies of penitent jurors picnicking beside a lake. At times, a single cloud appeared, shaped in each detail to a finished image. A dog, a terrier reclining with tight wire hair. Then there was a tower, which cast the same shadow from all angles. I remember in my youth, the tower was the archetype for wisdom and endurance, a bird which circled it for 1,000 years. And yes, I studied the sounds of the train which passes each day, late, when the sun is dull like her eye through that strangled veil. Now is the morning of that day. I hear the workers in the yard and move to my window. The guillotine rises within a block of stray darkness like the blade of a lovely skater. I hear the signal. The switch is thrown. My priest enters as the bars slide open in unison like shadows of my former selves, many and thin and wasted, marching with precision toward a more passionate goal. Okay, these are from the Book of Nods. They're called Heritage of the Monkey. I'm a trained monkey. You don't see many of us anymore, though the streets of the larger cities were once filled with us. Who is to say why we have nearly passed, like several of my cousin species in the jungle and rainforests, into extinction? Some say we were no more than a fad, and like all fads, we're bound to pass. That it is no longer charming to see us dance as our masters grind out music from an old and far-off country. But I am a living, breathing thing, and find it abusive to be so labeled. I would have you know that I am part of a prestigious line of trained monkeys. My grandpapa worked in the movies from the time he was taken from his own mother's breast. He was the one who swirled at his master's feet as he played a mournful dirge in an exquisite dance of foreboding, as Lawrence Tierney, playing the gangster John Dillinger, walked to that final movie with the traitorous woman in red. My own mother appeared often on the stage in what has come to be called the golden age of television, before she was sold by the trainer, a scoundrel and drunk, to a life in the streets, dancing as I still dance for the coins of children and the good working people returning from their lunch breaks. We worked together through my early years, my mother and I. Oh, truly, it was the most wonderful time of my life. I recall with the greatest detail the way she would lovingly swat me across the head as I scuffled across a path on the pavement, the way she would teach me with such patience the secrets of certain acrobatic stunts, which some experts would have you believe are inherent characteristics of our species, but believe me, they are not inherent, but very much acquired skill. For example, have you ever seen a relationship of mine among the trees and trellises of this natural jungle environment do somersaults on the seat of a bicycle, as is my mom pedals with a chrome guard above the back wheel? But more than any of this, I remember the touch of her small pink fingers as she drew me at night, tugging my ear with her tight lips, and once again, the loving swat, signaling she was finished, signaling that I should sleep. This is called With Van Gogh. I'm sitting on a park bench in the neighborhood where I was raised as a boy. Van Gogh approaches me in the dark, a wide blue gash laid across his luminous cheeks. There were some thin papers folded beneath his arm, secured by a ribbon. He was wearing a cheap iridescent suit. Beneath it, a yellow polo shirt with the image of two small green alligators copulating sewn above the pocket. Over his spiked red hair is a felt hat. Its wide brim is covered with 12 thick candles. It's a bit baroque, I thought, but okay. They are burning rapidly in the wind to give off the scent of a cathedral. There is no reason I should know who he is, but I do. He tells me he is going down beyond the running track to paint the Harlem River. I ask him to sit a while and talk with me, and in a crippled fashion, he lowers himself beside me on the bench. I notice the famous missing ear, and he sees this and anticipates a question. It was an experience, right? And he laughs. We are both laughing. We can't stop laughing. We are bent over with our fists pounding into our guts and howling into the wind as it grows. Just then this woman in dark dress approaches us in tears. Van Gogh looks up to her as if to ask, "Why are you doing this?" The woman explains that she has come tonight to realize so many contradictions in her life that her entire life seems a contradiction, and that she has been able to bear such a notion and so has been weeping all through the evening and now into the night. Van Gogh and I look to each other and slowly build into even greater fits of laughter. He is pointing up at the woman and clutching my knees, and his shoulders are bouncing up and down in hysterics. The woman cries harder, as if from her tears to outdo our laughter. Seeing this, Van Gogh rises, standing before her, and mutters slowly the phrase, "So many contradictions, so many contradictions, my many contradictions," over and over. And he closes his fist and smashes the woman across the face with incredible force. As the woman, who I see now is quite beautiful, goes down to the pavement, Van Gogh falls back beside me on the bench and looks at me laughing. Then he looks down at the woman and speaks. "There, now you really have something to cry about." He looks back over to me. After a moment of silence, we begin laughing again. I throw my arms around him and lay my head to his shoulders, continuing to laugh until my tears begin to fall down the lapel of his suit, which is glowing from the fluorescent light in the lamppost above us. I have these pieces about Rimbaud, like little pieces about secret things that happen in Rimbaud's life that are not recorded by his usual biographies. This is about him seeing this dentist. He saw the first dentist who was experimenting with nitrous oxide. He happened to take up the experiment and said, "I'll volunteer immediately." As he had promised, the old man knocked off his door early that morning. Rimbaud was ready, and together they passed down to the fresh blocks of sunlight across the sidewalks. Rimbaud was neatly dressed, though his frail black tie, which was more like the lace of a boot, could not conceal the lines of dirt along his collar. "You should hold no fear of the pain one often takes for granted on the way to the dentist," the old man explained. "For this particular one has lately been experimenting with a strange new form of gas called nitrous oxide, which is, to all reports, quite successful in eliminating such discomfort." Rimbaud nodded to that, though, as such things were, he was rather looking forward to an experience which involved the purging of one form of pain through the means of another, even greater pain. By the time they had reached the office, however, and the old man had made payment and Arthur had been seated in a chair, and unlike that of a barber, he had grown curious about this new gas and asked the dentist if he might inhale some as part of his treatment. The dentist, who was fat and with a stale yellow beard, was delighted. This young man had known of his innovation. He began to attach somewhat clumsily a black mass shaped like a cup over the poet's mouth and nose. The long rubber tubing ran from the poet's mouth and nose. He turned a knob on the mouth of the cylinder, readjusted the mask, patted the young man's shoulder, and told him to relax, that he should return in a short time. "There is no time to speak of that is short," Arthur was mumbling. "And there is a tiny German whose clothing is in flames running in circles along the back of my jaw." The dentist chortled at this and walked through the door to his outer office, knowing the gas was working. The old man had told him his young patient made claims to writing poems, and now he would allow some time to pass before he began extracting teeth. He would allow the poet to dream in nitrous oxide dreams. So Rimbaud dreamt the dreams of women with black skin whose lips were like drums, of rodents sealed in kegs of blue water, of lightning shaped like freight trains passing vertically through the branches of trees, whose leaves were knives falling to the earth and standing upright with butterfly epidemics and eucalyptus groves. There was a speed in these dropping from the sky, as if they were against the bony spine. With this curling innocence revealed, he dared overturn the master and fixed his eyes with pagan blessing on the gold inlay of a crucifix chained to Verlaine's airy breast. He linked his thumbs to his scarred nipple, caressing there with his need for pain, and withdrew. He descended his lips and kissed the feet of the jade Christ figure, and fingered the cross with the curiosity of a child inspecting gears beneath the skirt of a mechanical ballerina. Under the intensity of this tunnel scrutiny, Verlaine felt the sharp discomfort in his bowels. He wanted to excuse himself to the end of the hallway, but under the eyes he was rightly pinned and covered him without warning and suffocating like a deadly pillow. Rimbaud turned about the object with stained forefingers and undid a latch in back of the cross with fingernails thin and dangerously long. It opened to reveal, resting on a strip of liturgical velvet, a fragment of soft wood, the signs of a starving insect. He saw Verlaine's eyes. What then is this sliver of wood which rests upon such fine velvet? It is a fragment of the true cross, on which died the Savior Jesus Christ, while wept beneath him a whore named Magdalene on the mountain of the skull. Rimbaud had known already exactly what it was, but was amused by the prosaics of his companion's reply. He knew also that this relic with its gaudy filigree must surely be a gift from Verlaine's wife, whom he despised with his flowing passion. Yet his eyes swelled, for the myth of his childhood was a breath away. They sunk in that moment for his lover's chest, where Verlaine could feel the quivering of lips. Suddenly, like a piston with a muffled speed, he drew up with his teeth a sacred sliver from his antique bed, as a child would remove a rose thorn from his fingertip. Verlaine bolted straight on the bed. The force knocked candles to the floorboards, and hot wax sought the crevices. Although Jean Arthur had leaped the corner of the room, striking poses he had learned from bearded soldiers at the commune barracks, and he swallowed the molding relic and inhaled deeply and 7 times the air available to him. Verlaine leaned in disarray from the edge of the bed, his fist digging between tight thighs, the crucifix around his neck open. No question, he did not notice the patch of velvet beneath him on the throw rug, his tongue locked by his teeth. The silence. Rimbaud spoke. Now the history of Christ's death rests in my body and will pass through by morning. Tell me, what poison could be more exquisite? Yeah, let's go read this. I just wrote this today, so I don't know if I got the rhythm, but give it a shot. I actually typed it today. I didn't rewrite about it, though. There were the cheap rooms on that floor with the bathrooms down the hall. Late at night, through his insomnia, he counted the times the women used their shared toilet, especially the giggly pair in the room 2 doors down. They were young. They'd been there only 2 days. One always seemed to take an awfully long time, much too long to simply urinate, even taking into account, as he did, the possibility that they were drinking California wine throughout the night. She is masturbating, and it is obvious, he said this, for some reason, out loud. And realizing what he had done, realizing that he might easily be overheard by one of the passing women, he wrote out on a yellow note of paper, it said in block letters, "Talk silently to yourself." And he attached it with some tape to the frame of the mirror. When he turned to the image he held of her, it seemed unbalanced, tentative, and precarious. This time he kept silent, however. Maybe that was why it slid back and forth. She was rubbing her clitoris in circles with the tips of her pinky and thumb pressed together. She was cooing very softly. Again, he made his imagined sound abruptly, a sort of glottal strut, out loud, and quickly checked himself, peering up to the mirror and shaking his head. These things were difficult. Lacking any imagination, she thought of nothing in particular as she manipulated herself, only of the narcissistic pink color of the door before her in the bathroom. He knew the color, having used the ladies' room himself when no one was around. The expanse of pink opened in her mind to a meadow of blinding pink light. Pink as the clitoris, she was now rubbing, her fingers pressed together in a triangle, like some oriental greeting. He always used the same clinical choice of words. He always used a more clinical choice of words in his inner dialogues, like clitoris or penis, never resorting to those vulgar euphemisms. He thought words used in their formality were much sexier. He heard these words spoken always in a voice not quite his own, an assured, commanding female voice, that of a wealthy child's guardian, or more specifically the voice of that one woman doctor in the staff of the ward he had been in those 3 Christmases ago. The doctor he always asked to have his sessions with, but was never allowed, forced to seek the Chinaman instead. She was returned now to her room, her roommate having answered the squirrel-like knock, and they were giggling again as if she had never left. God, the doors here are thin, he thought, hearing her. Can they hear me when I sing along with the radio? He panicked at the notion, resolved never to do that again, never to sing out loud. He drew another piece of stationery from the drawer. He wrote out a reminder, which he again taped to the mirror, this time to the bottom of the frame. It read, thin door, dash, 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 don't sing either, dash, 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 ever, dash, 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 but inside yourself singing is okay. We heard the girl's voices louder now, but he heard the girl's voices louder. He didn't mind that. He enjoyed hearing them, though wondered what there was to laugh about so constantly. Then he thought, no, he was certain that he could distinctly hear a man's voice among the 2 girls. Suddenly they giggling annoyed him incredibly. He felt it as a physical force, like a branch snapping him in the face by some wholly inconsiderate stranger passing before him single file through a thin trail in a woods which he suddenly recalled, like a cuffing across his frost-stung ears by a nun as he arrived late on a winter morning to school. The giggling no longer seemed airy and expansive, trailing out into nothing but the hallway. It seemed now stifling, tightly enclosed and claustrophobic, moving directly into his brain, into the small room which was his, which he had rented at daily rates. Now all that silly childish laughter was only a response to the deep male voice he pictured obscenely between them, laying back on a single bed spread with the same orange and brown pattern as his own. He was surely dark, this fellow. His belt was unfastened, and apparently he didn't care. His bass voice seemed to curl like a jungle trellis, a snake around objects, and tighten itself there. At this moment, it was fastening itself around the girl's wrists. He was waiting, hoping, in fact, that they would scream for help. Yet they only continued with their ridiculous giggling. He felt a swift anxiety and rage. The smooth walls of his room were appearing to crack into wet stone blocks as in a cell. He tried an anxiety-reducing breathing exercise which the black nurse on the midnight to 8 shift had taught him in the ward. It involved breathing through alternate nostrils, but he couldn't remember which nostril to begin with, and that, as he recalled, that was all important. The walls were dripping liquid retinas. He tried beginning with the left nostril. It seemed to work. The walls began to look smooth again. He felt the plaster. It was smooth. It was nice. He was about to call the desk, but he thought better of that. He was mindful of another nurse he favored there, telling him that they had great difficulty placing him in this hotel and not to cause any trouble, to be as inconspicuous as possible. He jumped up and made another small sign with block letters, taping it beside the others in the mirror. It read, "Be inconspicuous." Already standing, he headed to the wash basin. He preferred that term to the sink. It was listed that way in the hotels we're sure they had sent him. Single rooms, includes wash basin, adequate bathroom, bathing, shower facilities, and hall. He liked the word facility. He began to run the hot water. It was very hot. He could brew tea in the morning or prepare instant coffee with water running hard directly from the tap. The rising heat now fogged up the mirror of the medicine cabinet above the basin. Then, as if to prove a natural God-given advantage over these giggling girls and their kind who by necessity to squat need use the toilet down the hall, often waking him at all odd hours, he proceeded to piss directly into the flow of water, watching a spiral jetty of yellow circular drain disappear, steam forming droplets of condensation on his penis. When he was through, zipping back up his pants, he looked back into the mirror. In the fog formed in the glass from the vapors rising, he truly, without realizing or intending it, so that on seeing it, it briefly shocked him, had written plainly in the same block letters as his mirror notes, "Now I have found the only advantage of being a man." This is called Just Visiting. When the shooting broke, I decided to tell it's the same character actually. This guy just got out of this hospital. When the shooting, he tries to rob a bank, but he fucks up. It's a day afternoon scene. When the shooting broke, I decided to vault the teller's window and face the fire from the other side. They saw my forearm tightening across the throat of the cashier, Miss Lattimore. And as my Browning was raised to a temple's pulse, they took it back. It all fell dead. With the silence, I felt the distance between my trigger and the man. I felt the reverberation of the last stray bullet's muffled ring. It moved out through my brain in circles of jagged light, expanding like still water broken by a stone. Some smart lieutenant arrived to take things over. He leaned his eyes a moment through the doors and back, then went around back of the building to throw the switch. The light rolled out of the thin vapor tubes above me from right to left. The darkness absorbed more silence. I could hear their details being assigned. The tone of the head man's voice was clear. They were hot to blow me away. I didn't expect my hostage would go down as a deal. I knew she signed that paper when she took the job, but I just wanted some last contact. I would have rather some sweet, clever music. I slid the strap to her bra, reached under. I felt my palm rinse her breast. It could have been a radio. I moved my lips closer so only she could hear me. It should have been a radio. I whispered in my coding voice. I told her, I said, you see, all my life, the women I've been with, and that's more than you can imagine, really. I always bypassed their breasts. I went down, I went to the source. I honestly don't think you're going to die, so don't be afraid. Listen to me. I wanted the thunder on my lips. What are a woman's breasts? It's just so much adornment. They lay there like some chalice on an altar waiting for adoration. Like the writing on the scroll, the handles on the urn, the gold, the lines of vessel. I wanted the mystery inside, the thunder in the darkest light. I mean, I feel the sharpness of your nipples. It's flawless, there's no doubt about that. Just let me move it over here. Oh, it came out. It's so red. You must be younger than you appear. I know about that kind of thing, really. Once I told this girl she had breasts like bleeding lemons. She thought that was a beautiful thing to say. But what are they? It's just architecture. Where's the wetness and why are they so white, so terribly white? Whiteness frightens me horribly. When I was 14 years old, I went to my friend's house at the beach in Long Island. The sun there and the sand, I remember it. It was terrible, too much whiteness. I couldn't stand it. I stayed in my friend's room for days and listened to music. His mother and his fat sister thought me quite insane. I wanted to teach myself to play the drums. The sister was 36 years old and so fat the mother had to tie the laces on her shoes. I hated her and she hated me. But I was just visiting, so it wasn't very fair. One day I bolted out of the bathroom while she was listening, leaning up to the door, and I jammed a pencil into her jaw. She ran away crying about lead poisoning, but you know, you really can't get lead poisoning in that way. It's a wise tale. I know about these things, really. I do. At night, when the shadows cancel the blinding whiteness, I go down to the beach and run because it is important to keep the body well. That's in case they ever come again. You, I'm sure, don't concern yourself much worrying about them, do you? You know, your breasts are like that beach. It's so white and dry. It's so near to the source, the water and the motion of the waves. What could ever be more pure? Please, allow me to just feel down here. I won't try to stick anything up the wrong hole. I know that can hurt if you're not used to it. They did it to me. I let them think I didn't really care, but I found a closet down at the end of the tier, my cell block, and I hid in it and learned things and made marks in my forearm with a fork I snuck from the cafeteria. You can see here the scars. That's not just an X. It's actually an image of the cross St. Peter died on. They nailed him to it inverted, upside down. He's my patron saint. Ooh, there it is, and it's wet. From fear? Is it from fear? Wetness is not whiteness, but it's so dark. Whiteness is the color of death, you know, not black. Wetness is life, the breeder and shaper of life. In the beginning, the sun was black, so all light was absorbed before it had a chance to return. And all our dreams then were empty. Thank you.
A peculiar-looking girl, about 19 years old, picked me up this evening while I was making a phone call in a booth near the men's room at Max's. I couldn't quite put my finger on the exact nature of this peculiarity, but she definitely had a problem with her posture. She also kept telling me in this giggly voice, which is totally without appeal, sex or otherwise, that I looked a lot like Iggy Stooge, aka Iggy Pop, the rock and roll guy. If that was supposed to be great, I couldn't figure out why. In fact, she had this annoying habit of rolling her eyes around at the top of her head when she spoke, like a ventriloquist dummy, which made anything she said immediately forgettable and irritating. I had only stopped in there for enough time to partake of the free Friday evening happy hour hot plate of chicken grizzle and bad chili. It was still evening, still light out in the streets as we split for her place. I checked the twilight on Park Avenue South, the signs of the laser. Her apartment was only about 7 blocks away, but that was far enough to me to already be having second opinions about the whole idea. By the time we were crawling up the shaft of the freight elevator, she lived in a loft. My second thoughts had turned into positive doubt. She kept babbling on and rolling her fucking eyes again. By the time we were entering her place, a large, low-ceiling shambles, I had completely reevaluated the situation and realized it was simply a move made in haste, without much taste, and it was time to get wasted. Before anything whatsoever happened. Luckily, she made a contribution toward my chance of my salvation, telling me she was going to have a bath first, since she'd been out all day. By the tone in her voice, I could discern she was intimating that it would be a great thing if I would join her. Not, I believe, that she was coming on or was interested in aqua sex, but just because she thought it would be a sound and novel idea in the way of my personal hygiene, as well as hers, if I scat a little warm water. I told her to go ahead with it, then I relaxed on the couch and wait. She grimaced and went off. When she was in the other room with the water running, I reached into the inner line in my suede coat and retrieved a Band-Aid box which contained a new 27-point syringe, bottle cap, cotton, 4 $3 bags. It was from a new collection and was supposed to be hot property. I filled up a glass by the sink, threw in 2 bags, and proceeded with the procedure. I was just finishing up, the needle still in my vein, from one last boot for the old line, when, wouldn't you know it, she appears in a fucking kimono at the far end of the place. I can imagine the chump smile on my face, snagged in this outstanding act of vulgarity when I should be taking a bath. But it's strange. It's funny because she wasn't alarmed at all. She's got this blasé and accustomed look to her. I figured you'd think she'd at least ask for some. She then goes into his dresser and pulls out of a drawer this box. It looks like some hippie bathing oil, a bubble bath or something like that. Smiles down at me again, asks again if I'm sure I don't want to join her, and continues back to the bathroom. I come to realize, despite an incredible rush, my morphia bliss running through my body during her entire appearance, that she must have had out her contact lenses and was blind like Milton from such a distance across the loft, and in fact never saw a damn thing. I wish I could say the same thing, because I had seen directly through the water in my eyes what it was exactly that made me think of her as peculiar looking. As she bent over the dresser, I could plainly see through the sheerness of her kimono that she was a hunchback. And I'm not talking about a small protrusion here. I'm talking serious hunch. As in hump. As in Notre Dame. I was shocked. I was also quite ripped out of my fucking skull. The word in this dope was no exaggeration. I thought I should take advantage of her being submerged and make for the elevator, cleaning up my works and the blood off the floor, where I coyly dumped it before I realized she was Quasimodo's blind daughter. Worse than fucking Jim Want. While I was trying to decide on this course of action, however, the dope really kicked in and I had collapsed into a nod, which I don't really recall, though I do remember that Friar Tuck and Sherlock Holmes were in it, riding a mobile home with me through the main street of Southampton. Tuck wanted to stop and buy a polo shirt, but Holmes, deft at the wheel, refused to stop. When I came to, the place was in total darkness. The girl was dragging me across the floor, kicking me in the side with pointed heels. She was screaming something about her new sofa. I regained a fuller reality and realized what had happened. When I went out, my cigarette took a different course, rolling out of my fingers and down the side of her wine-colored new velvet sofa. The place was a mess. The sofa was a charred cinder, as both end tables were. I'd burned down half the poor peculiar girl's fucking loft, for God's sake. She had managed her own bucket brigade, and everything was soaked in pools of ash and gray water, including me. She obviously didn't think or care to remove me before she put out the couch. She was furious. Her hump was visibly gyrating counterclockwise. I wasn't going to stand still for any more of this bullshit. She had already insulted me by hinting, not once, but twice, that I needed a bath. I slid toward the door, jacket in hand, when she turned her back, trying to salvage something from the drawer of a steaming file cabinet. I opened the door, hopped the staircase, and speared straight down. That's the type of thing that Iggy Pop would do, I thought.
I think the political and social chaos we are seeing on every side reflects an underlying biologic crisis. End of the human line. All species are doomed from conception, like all individuals. Evolution did not come to a reverent halt with Homo sapiens. We have the technologies to recreate a flawed artifact and to produce improved and variegated models designed for space conditions. Perhaps there is still time. Is this being done or even considered? Back to the church, the home, and the family. Back to the simple American virtues that made this country great and can make this country great again. If I may be allowed a flight of whimsy involving articulate dinosaurs, fellow reptiles, I do not hesitate to tell you that we face grave problems. I do not hesitate to tell you that we have the answer. Size is the answer. Increase size. There are those who say size is not the answer. There are those who even propose that we pollute our pure reptilian strain with mammalian amalgamations and crossbreeding. And I say to you that the only way I could survive was by mating with egg-eating rats, then I would choose not to survive. But we will survive. We will increase both in size and in numbers, and we will continue to dominate this planet as we have done for 300 million years. Bigger is better and biggest is best. Armored models thump their tails in earth-shaking applause. Herbivorous dens wallow and splash in swamp mud. Carnivores bear their huge fang dripping streamers of saliva and approval. But a wise old dine turns sadly from the TV and addresses his offspring. Son, it's the end of the line. We're ugly, idiot, bellowing beasts. Some of us are 60 feet long with a brain the size of a walnut. Where can this end? In the Natural History Museum, our bones gawked at by pimply adolescents. Say, I wonder how big his crick was. Their turn will come. Back to the home and the family, back to simple American virtues. Biologically speaking, the one direction you can't go is back. It's the law. Dolphins lived on land at one time. We know that because they have air-breathing lungs. Now that they have returned to the sea, it might be handy to reclaim their lost gills. No glot clump blighty, an evolutionary step that involves biologic alterations is irretrievable. We must now make such a step if we are to survive at all. And it had better be good. I have predicted the transition from time into space will involve biologic alterations. Such alterations are already manifest. Astronauts stand to lose their bones and teeth in a turbot. If you don't use it, you lose it. A skeleton has no function in a weightless state. So what does the end result look like? Well, rather like an octopus or jellyfish. Beau Brummel, the restoration dandy, spent hours every morning putting exactly the right crease into his cravats by lowering his chin just so. Often his valet would carry out armfuls of crumpled linen. All failures. So we can imagine the cosmic butler carrying out bundles of unworkable monstrosities or failures.
Hi, this is the Reverend Hell. I'm eating a sandwich and getting a blowjob. I'm not really getting a blowjob. At least I don't think so. I just don't know anymore. Stop that ridiculous music. You know, friends, preaching is a heavy burden. Sometimes I wonder, should I turn in my collar? I'm confused. God keeps fooling me. Or is it the devil? But I'm so full of love, I know I have a mission tonight. And just because I have these nocturnal missions, it don't mean it's the devil's work. God still works while we sleep. I'm so full of love, it just runneth over. You know, I saw the Reverend Al Green last night, and I heard him say, you didn't need money if you had love. And then he took off his shirt. I believe him. We must be as little children. Short attention spans. Mysterious hard-ons. Tears. Sudden mood shifts. Fuck you. Send money. All is well. God speaks through me. Hello, friends. This is the Reverend Hell, back again, bringing you no hope whatsoever. And brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you, times have been hard in hell. That guy I was talking to, I found out he wasn't God after all. Who's preaching? Get rid of that guy. Cut the fucking organ. But really, everything's all right. Cheer up, friends. Amen. Praise God. I've been praying.